Hello, it is I, Cole Shalata. I grew up on horror novels. I remember some of my first books being like kooky kids' scary stories, and when I was old enough to start reading on my own, Goosebumps and Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark were the first things that drew my attention. Authors like R.L. Stine, Roald Dahl, and Alvin Schwartz defined my childhood, until I graduated to Stephen King in middle school. This is why I'm choosing to talk about an issue that I think is plaguing the horror literature community. This is not a topic I've seen covered very much, but I do want to give credit to Grady Hendrix, who's the author of Paperbacks from Hell, which was a big inspiration for me, and the YouTube channel In Praise of Shadows, who made a video pretty similar to this one. Basically, the covers of newer horror books, as well as newer editions of older books, have taken a very different stylistic approach compared to the original releases from the 70s and 80s, which was the height of horror literature. Back then, covers weren't afraid to embody the theme and tone of the book. These covers were often campy and cheesy, but most importantly, they were scary. Now publishing companies have almost entirely opted for more sleek and stylish designs, which oftentimes are visually appealing, but they don't really capture the essence of the book, nor do they draw in the intended audience. There's been a strong decline in the popularity of horror literature in recent years, with Stephen King being possibly the last of these dinosaurs, and I think the book cover phenomenon is a big contributor. Let's take a look at a couple of Stephen King's books to start. Here are the original and most recent covers of Stephen King's Skeleton Crew and Misery. Now, I'll be the first to admit that the new covers are visually appealing, but do they really tell us anything about the content of the books? The old covers obviously evoke feelings of terror and dread, but these new covers could be pretty much on a book about anything. If a book cover can't even tell you what genre the book is supposed to be, how can it be expected to draw in the intended audience? Now, I understand that the publishers are relying more on Stephen King's name being the selling point rather than the actual content of the book, but I think this poses an issue in itself. This might be great for longtime readers, but it's not very effective for bringing in a new generation of younger horror readers. I think this is the main reason why Stephen King is one of the few popular horror writers left. If his books rely on name recognition to sell, how can a horror book be discovered if it's written by a lesser-known author? The covers certainly aren't a draw. At least in Stephen King's case, his books take themselves seriously, so the new covers fit at least in that regard. But this same treatment to more campy pulp horror novels has been disastrous. Here's a book called The Little People by John Christopher. It's about BDSM Nazi leprechauns. Clearly, this book appeals to a very niche audience who loves crazy, lighthearted pulp horror. If someone were to pick up this book because of the new cover, they definitely wouldn't be getting what they bargained for. The same goes for this book, The Cartoonist. The original cover is goofy and fun while also being a little scary, and the new cover just looks like the goddamn Giver. And here again with Roald Dahl's Kiss Kiss, a book with a very macabre sense of humor. The original cover portrays this perfectly, and the new one doesn't look funny or scary in any way. I'd imagine this book is a saucy romance with a cover like this. I think this is happening because there seems to be a modern appeal for simplicity in art. It's unknown why there's been this recent shift. Some people argue that it's because our attention spans are getting shorter, but I think in many ways it's just sometimes harder on the eyes to look at something that's overcrowded with information. Our brain can quickly get overwhelmed when it's being overstimulated by too many things at the same time. But while this trend in art can be mainly a new positive shift in style, I think it's been damaging to new book covers, especially ones that have a limited target audience. Now I want to shift gears and talk about the evolving covers of children's horror books, which have taken the opposite path, but also for the worse in my opinion. Goosebumps are basically the gateway drug for kids entering the horror community. And for most kids, it was the covers that initially drew them in. They're eerie and mysterious, yet subtle, and play into a child's imagination. The newer designs, on the other hand, just slap a big monster on the cover. This can't be more apparent than with Monster Blood. The original cover is comparatively realistic, and it intrigues you without giving too much away. And the new cover...
fucking thing sucks!
The same can be said for the covers of One Day at Horrorland, which is one of the most iconic books in the series. And again we see this with the horror at Camp Jelly Jam, which is particularly infuriating because this book is a mystery and the new cover spoils the ending. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark has been updated as well. I think all of these show that we are just respecting our kids less. We're dialing down the genuine scares for a more Halloween-y aesthetic. All in all, I think horror literature has suffered due to the hands of an uncreative capitalist machine that serves to mass produce the same type of content, and we might be witnessing the extinction of the community as we speak.